Guys, welcome to a new series idea. From Twink to Tyrant, it is basically 0 to hero, with the same challenges and me trying to figure out a working character, only I don't start completely fresh, I start as a Twink. This will impact the start of the run, of course, but I believe this will be enjoyable too, as I still have no clue what I'm doing half the time, which is what you guys seem to like, and I do like that too. I'm skipping a few acts and I start in the hideout. I'm a Scion, self-casting Desecrate and then self-casting Volatile Dead. This may give you some sort of indication, and in the field, in Act 2, this kinda works. It's a little wonky, 2 buttons, but I want to build on an idea from Dreamcore. I found a few interesting pieces and I will share some of the thoughts process throughout the campaign. I will also be leveling using the skills I want to use to get an idea what the skills feel like. I always liked Volatile Dead, I just never really used it. It requires corpses to be used, it is basically detonate dead, but then in an exploding ball. A little later I realized that with the Reverberation Rod and Spellslinger I may be able to Spellsling the Desecrate and the Volatile Dead, reducing the build to a one-button build, and that actually works quite well. I use Power Siphon because it auto-targets, and some crit chance is nice because I'm running Elemental Overload from the power charges. I think this is very fun, Volatile Dead balls all over the place, this is what I ultimately want. I take 100% increased damage against burning enemies, seems reasonable that I ignite here and there, and here is a bit of damage. I'm wearing Twink items, right? You can maybe make out which ones, I'm not using MTX. It is about the concept though, and I think the concept works for now. I keep doing this for a while. I like to get a feel for a skill or build while leveling, so I already anticipate a bit on what I envision as the final form. Or well, at least, the idea I have right now of a final form. So this isn't as much about speedrunning the campaign as it is about figuring out the skills and the build. And I do that in-game, like I said, not in PoE usually. I equip Light of Lunaris, that's a cool MTX by the way. I try Spell Echo as a support, but that doesn't work with triggered spells and Spellslinger triggers, which I realize over here. Single target, sure, in Act 4, but still, it isn't bad. Desecrate generates the corpses, Volatile Dead targets the boss. I get the guaranteed 5 link in Slave Pens, I might as well equip it. I'm not using 6 links because I can't afford it with Spellslinger, it's so expensive. And then Kitava, all good so far. Time to try some more tech, the Squirming Terror Ring, which spawns a worm. I like that, of course, the more worms the better. And then this happens, the Merc is doing target practice. That's fun, but not what I was aiming for. What I'm trying to do is generate corpses for Volatile Dead without using Desecrate. But the worms, as it turns out, don't leave corpses. So it's not working, this idea. In fact, this made my build a lot worse, and I have no mana, so I am back to Praxis for now. My journey continues. Here I reach level 55, which is a milestone, because that means I can equip Corpse Walker. Unique boots which generate corpses, in theory solving my corpse generation problem for which I currently use Desecrate. Corpse Walker summons corpses from the area monsters every second I believe, and I feel it could be enough to just get the balls rolling, as it were, and then actual corpses of killed monsters may do the rest. And at least in Dread Thicket, which isn't the most challenging zone of the game, it works. And on bosses it works too, with the caveat I have to keep walking around to generate corpses. Keep walking is good advice in Path of Exile, but if you don't walk, your build doesn't work, maybe pushing it. But okay, for now it is fine. At least the theory I've come up with so far works. There is more though, this staff. I've always wanted to make a build with Soul Rest, but I never have. I need to be level 60 though, which I reach here in the Grand Gate, so I 6 socket the staff and 6 link it. I have been collecting fusings after all. I then socket Cyclone, cast when channeling, and the Volatile Dead setup in there, and that results in this. A single button, way too slow automatic baller. This was my idea from the start, with some scaling I yoinked from Dreamcore, who makes fantastic content I feel. Because, while this is the shell you could say, which I may or may not keep, the staff does something interesting. It summons phantasms, and this league the Reliquary can gain Phantasmal Might from the Ascendancy, where each summoned phantasm turns that into flat physical spell damage, massively increasing flat damage, the more phantasms you have. I'm still a Scion, by the way, so that part doesn't work yet, but that is the whole idea. Until then, I can spin to win my way through the zones, which is super slow, but I'm having a great time because so far the plan is working. So next steps are getting my 3 ascendancies going. Currently I have none, finish the campaign and then test this out in maps. Maybe Cyclone isn't the way to go because the downside isn't only the speed, but it is also the fact that I'm using 2 gem slots which basically do nothing except automate the volatile dead, namely Cyclone and cast on channeling. Plus I have summon phantasms on this too. I can also see a world where I am casting a spell to generate the phantasms and maybe even corpses, and then using another trigger that is cheaper and doesn't cost me 2 links to generate the volatile dead. Or maybe even just self-cast volatile dead and automate everything else. I think there are plenty of options. This staff is very interesting, but I will talk about it after I have my 3rd ascendancy. My mappers want me to play this build as well, as they brought me a Kitava's teachings, another source of corpse consumption. I then did all the 3 labs at level 68, which went well, and while I'm killing Kitava, let me explain this staff and basically the build concept. My 3rd ascendancy is the Black Cane, which grants me Phantasmal Might. For each phantasm, I get 1 stack of Phantasmal Might, and depending on the level of those phantasms, those stacks give me flat physical spell damage. That gets added to Volatile Dead and any other spell really, making spells have tons of flat damage. I gain these phantasms because of Summon Phantasm support and because of the Soul Rest staff, which summons a level 25 phantasm whenever I consume a corpse. And because Volatile Dead consumes corpses, that summons phantasms, scaling the Volatile Dead. That only leaves me with the issue of corpse generation, which you can get from killing enemies of course, but also for boss situations. I have the Corpse Walker, which generates corpses if I walk around or spin to win. On top of this, I added Kitava's teaching to the build in a cluster slot, also consuming corpses and providing life and mana sustain. It all works, as you can tell, I would say right now, and for the foreseeable future, the biggest constraint to increasing DPS is corpse generation, and I also suppose phantasm generation. I somehow need to generate more corpses. Another thing that is not ideal is that Phantasmal Might gives me flat physical spell damage, which isn't scaling with any of the passive tree investments into fire and elemental damage that I've done so far, so I should convert it. There is an easy 40% Fizz to Fire conversion on a Fire Mastery node, and the other 60% can be done by the gloves or by the passive tree, or in theory even support gems. Now that the campaign is over, it is time to prep for maps and experiment some more. First conclusion, Arcane Surge works, providing a lot more damage and mana regen. I decide for now on a Profane proxy with flammability, constantly cursing all enemies. I get rid of the taming, there aren't enough elemental ailments on enemies I feel to make this worth it, plus I need Chaos Res. I feel I don't need more sixlings, giving me a lot of freedom in which body armor I can use, and I'm picking a few candidates from the unique stash tab. Cloak of Flame, Carcass Jack, and this one, Waxen Soul. Never used it, it looks amazing though. I make myself a bit of a leveling tree with a lot of Abyss, Monster XP Beyond and player power with Shrines, Huck and Packed with Energy. I craft myself some flasks, including another synergistic one, the Cinder Swallow Urn, which also consumes corpses. This increases my need for fresh corpses further, however. I automate all of them as well and I get bleed immunity on a life flask. Time for a test run. This is a tier 1 map. Let's take a look at the build. There's quite a bit going on here. The main build mechanic is the same, scaling with phantasms. I'm usually stuck at around 20 of them. Cyclone triggers Volatile Dead and the balls automatically target enemies. All the green stuff that you see on the enemies, that is the Cinder Swallow Urn apparently, that is active all the time. This also results in significant energy shield recovery every time I consume an ignited corpse, which is very often. For auras, right now I have Clarity, Skitterboss and Discipline enabled, as I feel I do enough damage and I need mana regen and tankiness. You may also notice the blood shrines from the chest piece, which I only notice halfway through the second map. These trigger all sorts of effects, including red tornadoes, curse on hit effects, explosive toads, swarm of locusts. It is like they put the biblical plagues of Egypt in a single item and spawn a random plague every 10 seconds. I think this is amazing and pretty useful for this build, and for sure nice to showcase because I'm not sure you guys are even aware this thing exists. I wasn't, at least. The main issue with it is twofold, I would say. I'm not really using half of the unique modifiers on this thing, and the base defense stats on the item aren't great. I do feel a bit of an urge to try and make a build around this item though, it looks great, however that will not be this build. Meanwhile, I keep ramping the build. The tier 4 boss here goes down very smoothly. I get rid of the gold rim and take Ilfaband's trickery. It is temporary until I reach level 84. I focus on some block chance in the tree, some defenses. I convert a bit more Fist of Fire using an Eldritch Implicit. Realize I didn't quality Volatile Dead, which provides 40% increased ball movement speed. And here's another test run, tier 7 maps. I don't really consider myself much of a build maker, to be honest, in the sense that I look at people like Rutu or Jungron or Pelsteron, some of my favorite content creators when it comes to builds and content in general, to be honest, because those are the guys that I consider actual build makers, like excellent build makers. I'm just happy that whatever I come up with or try to create is able to do tier 16 maps. That is my goal. That is usually my goal. It is a pretty low bar, but I am realistic. The SRS Guardian is a good build, yes, but this is something completely different, of course. I know this is only a tier 7 map, but considering how smooth this is, especially when the flasks are up, how cool this whole setup looks, and the fact the damage isn't showing any signs of slowing down, I'm starting to gain more and more confidence in the build. Because this is mostly still pretty scuffed. Only 50% of Fizz gets converted, the passive tree is far from optimized, I am not res capped, I am not block capped, but a map like this, no problem so far. I get up to tier 9, Jungle Valley, I love this map, and here's the first time damage seems to slow down a bit. These Abyss rares definitely take time to die. I'm not generating as many Volatile Dead as the result of it. It is a little less effective, it seems. But you sometimes hit these moments in progression. It doesn't mean too much. Just leveling up a few times could fix the issue, as well as leveling up your skill gems, or in my case, get more summon phantasms going. In tier 10, monsters start to one-shot me. This happens multiple times, and I decided to use Cloak of Flame as a result. One of my ascendancy points, Dawnbreaker, already converts 25% of Fizz to fire. Cloak of Flame does another 40%, so that's a huge increase in Fizz max hit. I fix resistances with a better profane proxy, kind of an indicator how much I have already played this league to have this just lying around. Put a few extra sockets on the cloak, but I just don't need all that many of them. I really don't know what to put in there for now, so I decide on the second cast when channeling setup linked to Desecrate for quick corpse generation in case I need some. The only question is, what am I channeling? I try a few candidates, ideally of course some that synergize with all of my spell damage. First, Scorching Ray. It's not bad, at least in hideout. Decent range, gets me corpses pretty fast, I'm okay with this. Incinerate, less of a fan, it seems so short range. I run a tier 11 map and I don't realize I'm running a physical Thorns map, which is in fact triggered by my spells doing physical damage, so I am constantly killing myself whenever I encounter a rare. It takes me a little while to figure it out, but there you have it. Ultimately, I simply decide to not use either Scorching Ray or Incinerate, but a second Cyclone setup to generate corpses. I put some blue MTX on it to make it a clear distinction. The double Cyclone setup, it's not a bad idea, especially on bosses. Here I am generating corpses with the blue Cyclone and I'm consuming them with the red Cyclone. Tier 11 boss, by the way. Next test, a pretty juicy tier 14 map. I leveled up a bit, the gems have as well. I now have 21 phantasms. I can generate some extra corpses when I need them. It is not ideal, but it works. And what also keeps working is the build. It's relatively slow. A map takes me around 6 minutes, but damage is okay-ish. Recovery is very decent. There's going to be at least one big power spike still, so you know, I am quite content with what the build is doing in its current form. I still need to convert all Fizz to fire. I would love more corpses, but I will keep grinding. That power spike that I was referring to will be delivered by this item, the Dark Monarch, which still requires a few divines, but then will double my phantasm count. For rares and bosses, which can take a while, I decided to add Culling Strike. I reached level 84, which means I can now equip the Dark Monarch, and I put the Taming back in, partly to fix resistances. I put some quality on it, there's a little test run in the hideout, and that's a lot of phantasms. The question is, will they hold up in maps? And the answer is, kinda, not really. In theory, I have 42 of them, but in practice it's like half because the Abyss monsters are one-shotting all of the phantasms, a problem that requires fixing. I have found an unnatural instinct and I placed it here. It provides so many good nodes, especially the AoE is very nice. I do a bit of a respec primarily so I can get to Avatar of Fire, 50% Fizz to Fire conversion. And with the 40% from the Fire Mastery and the 10% from the gloves, I now convert all Fizz to Fire, making Volatile Dead once more a pure fire skill. I socket a decent Crimson Jewel and it is time for another test run, a tier 16 map, and the conversion is noticeable. These maps are for the most part incredibly smooth. Even the map boss, once I generate some corpses, isn't much of an issue and the character is very playable. It's mainly bosses that require both corpse generation and then the regular cast when channeling. I reach level 87, get corrupted blood immunity and decide to try to auto-generate corpses. This time by self-igniting using the Eye of Innocence. The idea is to self-ignite and then use a low-level cast when damage taken desecrate setup to generate the corpses. Let's do a test run, and this kinda works, but I also realize I have a lot of fire resistance and even a level 1 cast when damage taken requires me to take over 500 damage, which just doesn't seem to happen all that often. Whenever I take damage, it is just damage from monsters, not from self-ignite. Plus, I'm thinking it is maybe the mana cost that prevents this setup from triggering, so let's add a life tap support and check again, and the spell cascade for good measure. But no, a decent idea perhaps on paper, but in practice it doesn't work. I'm not done yet though, I can mutilate myself in other ways with the Heartbound loop. Now, this does 350 physical damage every time a minion dies, and if you have been paying attention so far, minions die all the time, and possibly many of them at the same time. You know, when my phantasms are hit by an AoE from an abyss monster. This is something I realized up front, but I still wanted to give it a go, and sure enough, this triggers all the time. It is great from that perspective, but I am also literally killing myself with this setup. I do believe there is something here though. I do try Eternal Youth for more life regen to offset the damage a bit, but also that doesn't prevent me from one-shotting myself. I try to opt for a safer setup. Desecrate, Spell Echo, Spell Cascade and faster casting. Self-casting, in other words. This puts 15 corpses on the ground in no time, but like I said, it is a self-cast. And sure, while it is not automated, I do feel this setup works very well. It has an incredibly short cast time too. Whenever you're going dry on corpses, just quickly cast this and you are typically good to go. I then think, why don't I just put Desecrate in the 6th link, remove a damage support gem and cast when channeled both Volatile Dead and Desecrate. And while this works, it also means that the trigger, the cast when channeling, alternates between the two skills, between Volatile Dead and Desecrate. So while you always and automatically have enough corpses, assuming you would otherwise have enough corpses anyway most of the time, you're cutting your damage in half. This is a decent setup, but I still feel I can get more out of my main skill by not adding Desecrate, so I opt for self-casting it, in case I need it. I drop a Rumi's Concoction. This is a great flask to help cap block. I divine it, a decent outcome, and I mess around with divine orbs on these amulets, and sure enough I get super lucky and hit +3 Volatile Dead. I equip it on the Reliquarian, fix broken attributes with an Abyss Jewel. I try to 5-link my Cloak of Flame and accidentally 6-link it. Pretty wild, so I can slot in some auras here with an Enlighten support. And then it is time for Katarina for the Bloodline Ascendancy. This isn't a boss killer, but I do take her down without too many issues. Unlock the Bloodline, but I still need to ascend a 4th time. I loot her Cane too with 4 veiled modifiers: Explode, Support Gems, Chaos Dot and Dex and Int. It is not for me, but who knows, maybe for another character. Time for the last lab then, which is quite easy given I'm farming tier 16 maps at this point. I now take Prolonged Servitude, ensuring the phantasms stay alive for long enough to provide the Phantasmal Might bonus. This works. I have very consistently 42 phantasms up, no worries there. I am, however, still quite squishy, a problem that I can't really seem to solve. I could invest more and try to fix more, but I'm also kind of done with this build. It can do tier 16s like I wanted. I learned a good bit about Phantasmal Might and the Soul Rest. I was able to turn it into at least something of a build. But on the other hand, I'm realistic and I think other people can do way better than this when they look at this build. This hasn't been much of a Tyrant, I do realize that, but hopefully you had a good time watching this video. Anyway, thanks for watching and making it to the end, I appreciate it. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.